Hello everyone. Tonight we'll board a rotting ship, where dried blood sticks to every plank and knives always shine brighter than the moonlight. This isn't a tale of treasure or heroic pirates with feathered hats. It's the real life where you kill to eat, forget to survive, and in the end, can't even recall your own name. Get ready, because you're about to see being a pirate in Columbus's time wasn't an adventure. It was hell adrift on the ocean. Before you lean back comfortably, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content I share. And leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see people tuning in from all over the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for some ambient sound, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. Imagine stepping into a world where beards don't grow for style, but because there's no water to shave, where every sea breeze carries the stench of dead fish, bird droppings, and regret. Forget the glamorous images from movies. No black flags flapping against a fiery sky, no dramatic ship raids with pounding music, no glittering chests of gold waiting to be opened. Instead, you were crammed onto a rotting boat, packed in with 30-something starving, stinking, toothless men. You didn't choose the pirate life. No, you were dragged onto this ship after a night of drunken debt, or for swinging a knife at a royal's man, or simply because you didn't run fast enough. This adventure doesn't start with a treasure map or a rousing song, but with a kick to your ribs and someone yelling in your ear, "Get up, you dead bastard." Your watch is on, and then you open your eyes, and the first thing you see isn't a blue sky, but a rat the size of a cat, gnawing on someone's toenail. In your ears, the waves aren't soothing. They're like they want to peel your skin off layer by layer. No bed, you lie on a moldy, damp tarp, cold as a prison stone. No friends, only prying eyes watching your every move, waiting to see if you've got anything worth stealing, even if it's just a rag. Before you can figure out what's happening, you're handed a broom, officially the lowest of the low, scrubbing the deck, shoveling bird crap, cleaning blood from the last fight. You ask someone, "Where's this ship going?" He laughs, his mouth a gaping void, wherever there's something to steal. And you realize you're no longer a free man, not a sailor, not a mercenary. You're a pirate, the cheapest, newest, most likely to die. And in that moment, amid the salty sea wind and the roar of a deranged captain, you hear a mutter from an old man picking at a piece of metal under his toenail. "Good luck, kid, you're gonna need it." Those words echo in your head as the ship groans under your feet, swaying like it's trying to hurl everyone into the sea. You haven't even remembered your name when the horn blares, shrill like a call from hell. Someone yanks the tarp off you, their hands smeared with something dark brown, dried blood, or rat shit, you can't tell, and screams in your face with breath, reeking of spoiled fish and old rum. "Get up, you louse. The sun's up, the deck won't scrub itself." And so the morning begins. No coffee, no bird song, just the creaking of your joints in the damp, salty cold. You stand, your feet slipping on something slick and foul. The guy who kicked you laughs, then shoves a bucket of water and a broken-handled broom into your hands. You ask, "How long do I scrub?" He winks, "Till the blood's gone, or till you're gone, whichever comes first." You start scrubbing the deck as the sun barely touches the torn sail. Each plank tells a story, a burn from a gunpowder blast, a nick from a dropped dagger, a hardened patch, hopefully molasses, but maybe brains. The ship never stops rocking, and each lurch is a battle between your stomach and the salty air rising straight from hell. They say sea waves are good for your health, but not these waves tossing you like meat stuffed into a pig's skin. The wind cuts through, carrying its signature stench, salt, sweat, gunpowder, and death. Atop the mast, another kid, probably younger than you, climbs like a monkey, yelling, "Smoke to the west," only to be shouted down. That's the kitchen. Seabirds swoop low, rats scurry past your ankles, and the captain emerges from the hold like a ghost. Hair matted, beard full of biscuit crumbs, eyes red like he's been talking to demons all night. He doesn't look at anyone, just mutters, "Who spilled the drinking water?" Everyone freezes. A minute later, there's a splash. Someone's gone overboard. You don't dare look to see who. A hairy arm slaps your back. Your turn to climb the mast. Wind's shifting. You swallow hard, staring up at the towering mast, where someone once slipped and turned into bone stew. The ropes are wet and slick as fish tongues. Your hands tremble. Your feet are numb with cold. But you climb, because if you don't, you'll be kicked into the sea with the crew's laughter. The wind lashes your face like a salted whip. At the top you shout, "Nothing out there." The response is a roar of laughter. Good, you're not blind yet. You slide down, arms aching. Back on deck, a guy spits phlegm near your ear, splattering your shoe, then claps your shoulder. Welcome to the morning shift. Breakfast? A biscuit harder than rock, paired with watery salt muck from a maggoty barrel. Don't eat, and you'll starve, and you'll slip on the mast, and die for sure. You chew like you're eating gravel, your throat raw, as if scraped by pebbles. The guy next to you pulls out his beard hairs and drops them into his bowl, then keeps drinking like it's nothing. A toothless old man carves his toenails with a knife and nibbles them. Second day, huh? Someone asks. You nod. He grins, holding up a hand missing 2 fingers. By day 3 I was like this. Keep it up. After breakfast, new task, cleaning the shit barrels. You thought only prisons had scenes like this, but no, this is the free ship. Free to stink, free to puke, free to die, anytime. Your hands blister from the salt, your eyes burn from yesterday's gunpowder smoke. An old man lies curled up in a corner, feverish and delirious, clutching a rag doll. No one cares. You ask, is he okay? Someone replies, he's fine, died last night. You swallow hard, look away, and realize, if you die tonight, no one will ask questions. Come morning, to the morning on the ship, drags like a malaria fever. When the sun hits the mast's peak, your back burns, and your legs shake like you've caught the fever through a glance. Someone fires a test shot, another sharpens a knife on the anchor rope. A goal lands and is plucked bare instantly. You sit in a corner, hands on your head, eyes fixed on a patch of dried blood. You're still alive, and on this ship, that alone is an achievement. But then your stomach starts roaring like a caged beast, and you realize being alive doesn't mean not being hungry. The next question isn't, what will I eat, but is this edible, or am I sinning against my stomach? Lunchtime arrives, and you quickly learn that the word meal here doesn't match any language you know. It's not meat, not fish, definitely not a simmering stew. What you're handed is a grey-brown square, hard as stone, dotted with tiny black specks. Someone says, sea biscuit. You ask, what are the specks? Maggots. Dead ones, don't worry. You try to nibble a corner, it doesn't break. You soak it in what they call drinking water, really a leaky, moldy wooden barrel, and try again. Still doesn't break. You look around, the seasoned guys use knives to chip away at it, like they're carving wood. One uses a pistol handle, another bangs it on the deck, like a drum, scaring off baby rats trying to steal a share. Next to you, someone breaks their biscuit and dips it into a greyish sludge. You look, he says, onion soup. You ask, where's the onion? He shrugs, nodding. Maybe there was one once. You glance at your bowl, no onion, just the smell. The smell of salt, mold, and something that died last season. You take a bite, your teeth crack like breaking glass. Your tongue stings, salty, bitter, fishy like rusted iron. Something soft squishes in your bite. You spit it out, a whole maggot, still twitching. The guy across from you shrugs. At least it's protein. No spoons, no plates, no napkins. Everything's by hand. The bowl passes through 5 people. No one knows who's sick, who's vomited. You stare at the bowl and decide to drink straight from your water jug. Then remember you don't have one. You ask for water. The guy at the barrel says, show your token. You don't have one. He eyes you up and down, then hands you a scoop of pale yellow liquid. You pray it's coconut water. The smell says it's something better not asked. You drink. Your eyes roll back, your throat burns like swallowing fire, but at least it softens the biscuit. Some eat dried fish, not bought, but scooped dead from the sea yesterday. Some eat it raw, some dip it in rum for disinfection. One unlucky guy bites into a fish hook, still lodged in the fish's mouth. Eating on this ship is a gamble. You don't know if it's food, laxative, or hallucinogen. A drunk guy yesterday ate barnacles off a barrel and laughed for 3 hours. Then he vomited his heart out. A toothless old man sucks on a biscuit from morning to noon as hard candy. What does the captain eat? You don't know. Rumor has it, he only eats roasted pigeon with strong liquor. But who supplies it? No one dares ask. The meal ends when the last guy licks his hand and wipes it on your shirt. No one washes dishes. No one wipes the table. Just flies buzzing and rats gathering for dessert. You clutch your stomach, unsure if you're full or just swallowed another day of misery. Your stomach contracts, expands, then drums non-stop. Your eyes glaze over. Your head spins like you're adrift in a dream. But before you can collapse, a shout rings out. New guy, clean the captain's vomit bucket. You don't know where it is, but the taskmaster tosses you a bucket and a broom. The biscuit hasn't digested, and you're ready to puke what's left. But you stand, because that's the law of the sea. Eat what you will, staying alive is what matters. And staying alive means cleaning up someone else's meal. So you clutch the stinking bucket, stumbling toward the aft, hold like a servant in hell's basement, your mouth still tasting of moldy biscuit and dubious salty water. But you don't get 3 steps before someone yells, "Hey, new guy, know how to tie a rope?" You turn. On the deck, a tangle of ropes lies like cow guts baking in the sun. A guy built like a gunpowder barrel, beard down to his navel, stands with a look like you just pissed in his boat. Tie the anchor to the mainmast. Now, you've never tied an anchor. You've never tied anything, except shoelaces, back when you had shoes. You grab the rope, stare at the mast, then at the guy's murderous eyes, and wing it. Bad choice. The anchor doesn't hold, the rope slips, and the iron hook crashes onto the deck with a boom like a death knell. Everyone turns to look. A second later, a slap hits your face like a sledgehammer, sprawling you across the deck. Ears ringing like a cannon went off by your head. "Nice one," the guy growls. "I bet hanging you upside down will teach you faster." You're dragged, hands tied, rope looped around your ankles. It happens so fast, and then you're hoisted into the air, head dangling, blood rushing to your face, the world spinning. You don't know if this is punishment or initiation, only that the laughter below grows louder, and someone throws a dead fish at you to add tradition. Under the blazing sun, you swing like a pendulum of punishment. Sweat stings your eyes, your mouth fills with sawdust and curses. Someone yells, "New guy's flying already." Promising, another raises a rum bottle. Bet how long he lasts. You don't know how much time passes. Just that blood pools in your brain, your hands go numb, and your shoulders burn like they're being stabbed. But then the rope tightens, stops swinging. The bearded guy climbs the mast, lowers you like a sack of garbage. You hit the deck, gasping like a beached fish. "Now tie it again. Screw up this time, and I'll hang you by your neck." You don't argue. Hands shaking, heart pounding, you grab the rope and look closely. A short guy with gold teeth shows you how to tie a bird's beak knot. Sounds like a dish, but saves your life. You tie, you pull, the anchor holds. The bearded guy nods. Good enough. Now clean the blood in the forward hold. Black guy got slashed yesterday. You get it, this isn't punishment. It's training, the kind that wrecks your nerves and body, until you never forget. The ones who know knots have been hung. The ones who haven't learned yet. On this ship, every skill is a scar. Every knot is a memory of pain. You learn fast, because the price of a mistake is being tossed overboard or fed to sharks. The afternoon rolls on with lessons sans textbook. How to lash sails, hoist signal flags, wrap rope around gunpowder barrels without blowing up if tugged too hard. You ask an old hand, anything gentler. He laughs. Sure, play the lute for the whales, then hands you a leaky bucket. Go scoop water. Ship's leaking somewhere. You climb below, water dripping through the hull, each drop like a needle in your eardrums. You sit there, amid the stench of dead fish, mold and rusting oil, draining yourself to keep the ship afloat, though no one says you're worth anything. When you return to the deck, the sun's dipping. You stand, hands crusted with dried salt, back scorched, head heavy like a boulder's crushing it. But you're not hung anymore. Not because you're good, but because you learned to tie a rope. And on this ship, every knot you tie right is one more day you delay death. But no matter how tight you tie, when the sun goes out, and the only light left is a flickering oil lamp swaying with the waves, everything changes. Not the pleasant kind of change, like a calmer breeze or softer waves. No, this is the kind of change that makes your skin crawl, your neck freeze, and your ears hear things that shouldn't be there. Night falls, and everyone goes mad in their own way. It starts with a moan. You don't know from which hold or from whom. A long, thin moan, like a taut rope about to snap. You lie on your soggy tarp, covering your nose with a rag to filter the stench of the feet next to you, hoping it's just the wind. But then you hear a clatter, like someone tapping fingernails on a barrel by your head. You open your eyes. No one's there, but the sound persists. One guy starts whispering to a fishbone, whispering, laughing, cursing, then whispering again. He used to be the main sailor, used to. Now he doesn't look at anyone, just chats with the bone. Another guy, who taught you to rig sails by day, now sits grinding his dagger against his teeth, making a grating sound like his teeth are whetstones. He doesn't look at anyone, just stares at a dried red spiral on the floor. You whisper, "What's that?" He says, "The gate," and nothing more. You try to sleep, but sleeping on this ship is a mental gauntlet. First, it never stops rocking, like a demon's pulling it. Second, the guy next to you might snore like a saw cutting steel, or moan like he's giving birth. And third, the fear, someone might strangle you with their own drawstring in your sleep. It happened to the Dutch guy last week, choked at night, no one saw, only found when his body floated up from the sacks. There's an unwritten rule: don't sleep if the guy next to you just fought someone. And advice: if you hear footsteps with no sound, don't ask, don't look. Silent footsteps are the scariest, not because they startle, but because they defy physics. The ship's all wood, every step should make a sound. But at night, some steps don't touch. You also notice some people on the ship never speak, never eat, never join in anything. They just sit, in a dark corner. Every time you glance, they're in a different spot. No one knows their names. Ask the gold-toothed guy, who are they? He chews his beard and says, they came aboard at Maracaibo in 1494. No one remembers who brought them. Then adds, as long as they don't look at you, you're fine. Your first night watch, you're assigned from midnight to near dawn, the hours they call the mad hour. You stand alone on deck, holding an oil lamp, wind gusting, sea spray slapping your face like a punch. The moon hangs dim, like a cracked bowl in the sky. Oh! You hear whistling, not sure if it's human or bird. Then a woman's voice, definitely a woman. There are no women on this ship. You turn, the lamp swaying with your trembling hand, nothing but the sail's shadow. But the voice comes again, closer, softer, like a lullaby. You grip the railing, draw your dagger, not because you think you'll stab something, but because your hand needs something to stop shaking. Then you hear breathing right by your ear, too close. You spin, no one's there. The next morning, you wake on the deck, back aching like it's been kicked, legs bruised, and a small red mark on your neck, like a rope burn. You ask, who was on watch after me? No one answers. The guy after you is gone, only his hat remains, and a trail of black water leading to the railing. Night is when the line between man and demon, real and mad, living and dead, is thinnest. You can learn to tie ropes by day, rig sails, throw knives, but you never learn to survive the night. You just hope something in you hasn't been swept away by the sea wind. And when the horn signals dawn again, you breathe a sigh, not because a new day starts, but because you didn't die last night. On this ship, that's a blazing success. But that doesn't mean you're living. It just means you're rotting slowly, day by day, bone by bone, skin by skin, hair by hair. And then, one morning, after a night-long nightmare of whispers and breaths by your ear, you wake to find your gums bleeding. You haven't touched anything, eaten anything, said anything, but blood seeps from your gums, bright red, thick, smelling like spoiled meat left in the sun. You're not alone. The guy next to you is rinsing his mouth with rum, spitting out blood and a loose tooth. An old man clutches his leg, scratching until flesh peels off, revealing green-yellow pus beneath. A kid with no name, you just call him Freckleface, hasn't moved in 2 days. His eyes are half open, skin pale as steamed fish, lips cracked from lack of water and vitamins. No one on the ship can name. Scurvy, no one calls it by its proper name, but everyone knows it, like they know the captain's name. It's the silent killer, no noise, no gore, no daggers. It makes you bleed from the inside, lose hair, teeth, nails, then your identity. A guy who was once the ship's handsomest, smooth face, thick beard, tanned skin, is now a walking corpse, cheeks sunken like a dog's snout, 3 teeth left, tears streaming for no reason. No fruit, no greens, no clean water. Your body's rebelling, silently but ruthlessly. Your hands sprout purple bruises for no reason. Your legs tremble when you stand. Each step is a groan, not from exhaustion, but because your joints are drying up like rusted hinges. Land, maybe. But what's on that land? No one knows. You only know one thing. Stay on this ship, and you'll die. And that death will have no name, no grave, no one to remember. It'll drift with the seawater, dissolve into the stench of rat droppings, and be cleaned up by maggots before anyone asks, what was his name? You don't want to die like that. Not today. Not in silence. Not like a moldy stain on a wet rag. So when the call comes, prep for landing. You push yourself up, trembling but smiling. Not from joy, but because you still feel something. And in this rotting world, feeling means you're not yet one of the nameless walking dead. Not yet. At least not yet. You still feel pain. You still smell the stench of death, and know you don't fully belong to it yet. And as if to remind you that being alive doesn't mean living comfortably, a shout rings out from the front of the deck. Who the hell poured fresh water on their hands? Are you insane? You turn. A burly guy is grabbing a young sailor by the collar, pointing with his other hand at a small puddle on the wooden floor. I saw it clear as day. You washed your hands with fresh water. You fancy eating dog. The kid being choked stammers an explanation. His hands wounded, cut, bleeding. He just wanted to clean it, but no one cares about his reason. His crime is wasting the ship's most precious resource. Not gold, not guns, but clean water. Fresh water on this ship is stored in rusty wooden barrels, locked tight and rationed like sacred treasure. Each person gets a tiny share, just enough to not die of thirst, but never enough to be clean. So when you think about washing your face after a night of rat bites and a day crawling in the hold, you know you can't use drinking water. And then, like so many before you learn the oldest lesson at sea. Want to wash your face? Use piss, no joke. Urine, warm, pale yellow, ammonia-rich, is used as an antiseptic, solvent, and face wash. Some collect it in iron bowls, let it cool, then dip a rag in it. Others invest by aging their piss in a leather pouch under the sun for 3 days to mature. The result is a pungent, concentrated liquid that can loosen pus, disinfect, and burn your face off, if not diluted. You don't believe it at first. Not until you see a sailor with a festering boil on his forehead dip a cloth in his own urine, press it on, and nod like he's applying a magic potion. He says, you can lose friends, teeth, toes, but don't lose your piss. That's what keeps you alive. You don't believe it until a small cut on your cheek starts to fester. You hesitate, but looking around, no one has medicine, no one shares water, and if you let it rot, it'll spread to your eye. So you do it. You ask an old guy for some of his 3-day brew. He hands you a soft leather pouch, reeking and faintly warm. You open it, and nearly pass out, but you wipe your face with it. The dried blood softens, your skin stings like a mild burn, but then, the itching stops. You feel lighter, not because you're clean, but because you've crossed some psychological line. Once you've crossed it, nothing phases you anymore. Some use it to wash their hair, some clean their feet, some mix it with gunpowder for enhanced wound treatment. Once you saw the captain splash a ladle of yellow liquid into a tortured prisoner's eyes, not for answers, but for punishment. The guy screamed, temporarily blind for 3 days. Lesson learned. Urine is a multi-purpose weapon. At sea, anything your body still produces gets used. No soap, no shampoo. Every rainfall is a festival. Everyone strips naked, running across the deck to catch drops, scrubbing each other like a pack of animals. You once used a seashell to scrape leg hair because you couldn't stand the mold creeping up to your hips. The guy next to you used a whetstone to scrub back sores. One man, lice-ridden, until his scalp swelled, shaved his head and smeared gunpowder ash on it to kill them for good. The human body has limits, but a sailor's body pushes past them at any cost, even if it means washing your navel with piss and brushing your teeth with dry salt mixed with charcoal. You saw a guy use shark skin to scrub his tongue clean. Result, a scraped tongue, no taste for 3 days. But he still grinned, better than bad breath. And as disgusting as it is, You get used to it, used to the smell, used to your skin peeling daily, used to the constant scratching, the third most common sound on the ship, after waves and curses. You get used to sleeping with the stench of piss on your cheek, used to someone pissing next to you and apologizing politely, like they just splashed perfume on your shirt. One day, you see your reflection in rainwater pooled on a barrel. You don't recognize yourself. Sunken eyes, grey skin, half your eyebrows gone, and a purple scar stretching from cheek to neck. You don't know when you got it, but you accept it, because you're no longer a normal person. You're a creature of the sea, part of the ship. Someone who learned to wash their face with piss and keep going. And in this bizarre world, that makes you scarier than anyone on land, because you've overcome disgust, overcome shame, overcome human instinct, and you're still standing, eyes open, dagger in hand, mouth muttering, still alive, still washing. You were mumbling that this morning, wiping dried blood off your cheek with a familiar ammonia-soaked rag, when the horn blares, not the usual call for food or watch change. This is a shrill, urgent blast, followed by shouts from the crow's nest. Strange ship, port side, Spanish flag, and you know a fight's coming, not with words, with bullets, knives, and bodies rolling like burst watermelons. Everyone scrambles like startled beasts. No one wears armor, no one wears shirts, just rags wrapped around waists, hands grabbing the nearest weapons, rusty axes, iron hooks, or a broken mast from the last fight. You run too. Run because if you stay still, you'll be the first mistakenly stabbed. On this ship, there's no formation, no strategy, just organized chaos. And blood. The sun hasn't fully risen. The light is cold and grey, like raw steel. The ship ahead cuts through the water like a rabid whale, the Spanish flag flapping in the mist. Your ship creaks, the deck shaking, as everyone pours strength into hauling cannons, tying ropes, sharpening knives. Everyone holds their breath. No one speaks, just grinding teeth, and your heart pounding like a funeral drum. Then, boom, the first cannon shot tears the air like thunder slamming into a gunpowder barrel. You see a man, the short guy who told jokes last night, blown into the air like scrap paper. His body explodes, raining flesh and bone shards onto the deck. You duck, instinctively. A piece of skull hits your shoulder, hot and wet like thick porridge. No time to think. You scream, charging to the deck with the nameless others. The enemy ship closes in, and then begins a scene you've only heard about, now living it. Both sides leap at each other, like starving demons. No rallying cries, just the screech of metal, the rip of flesh, and screams cut short by blades through guts. The first death you witness is a guy stabbed in the back by his own mate. He turns to curse, doesn't finish, and collapses, the knife still quivering in his spine. The second is a Spaniard, who jumps aboard, aiming to slash you, but slips on blood and crashes headfirst into a pile of anchor ropes. His neck snaps like a twig. The third death comes when a stray cannonball explodes near the mast. A chunk of the ship splinters, flinging 3 men into the sea, including the kid nicknamed Long Ears. You see him flail in the waves, mouth gasping for help, then his hand vanishes. Something took him first. The fourth death hurts most. A man runs to you for help, chest pierced, eyes wide, hands clutching you. You pull, but your hands slip from the blood. He falls into the hold, head smashing on a step. His skull splits like an overripe pumpkin. You vomit mid-battle. The fifth death, you're not sure who. You just know you stepped on a body. Legless, the rest lies still like a log. You don't stop to check, because a bear-sized man is charging with a meat cleaver axe. You dodge, not with skill, because you slip on someone else's blood. The clash lasts exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes long, as a winter. Each second is a scream, a cut, a curse. When the Spanish ship flees, your deck is littered with bodies. Some whole, some headless, some just halves. You collapse, hands shaking, face smeared with mud, blood, bird shit, and a tooth that's not yours. Your heart races, your ears ring, and one thought fills your head. I'm still alive. Not because you're skilled, not because you're brave, because you're lucky. They start clearing bodies, not with stretchers, with iron hooks, dragging them to the sea like trash. Some are identified, some aren't. A long-bearded guy whispers to a corpse he owed money to. See, I was right, not to pay. then kicks it overboard. You're called to clean the deck. Again, not as punishment. Someone has to do it. You grab a bucket, wiping blood, brains, and something you don't want to name. At one point, you look down and see your face in a blood puddle. Wide eyes, soulless, but not dead. And in that moment, you understand, victory isn't about how many you kill, but surviving without losing yourself. At least not yet. But then a shout. The English dogs might come back later, weapons ready, and you know, there's never time to breathe. Only time to count your knives, pick up your shoes, and wipe your face with a piss-soaked rag. Because the next fight, always, is lurking just beyond the horizon. So when night falls, and the deck is temporarily blood-free, you turn to the only thing that quiets your mind, rum. Not the fancy, fragrant stuff people imagine, but a cloudy liquid like fish oil, brewed from whatever's flammable, and left after cleaning moldy water barrels. But it's all you have. One gulp, and your head burns like someone lit a fire in your brain. Two gulps, and your heart races, your face flushes like a fever. Three gulps, and you start to forget the feeling of slipping on blood, the moans of the headless, and the image of a young guy curled up crying as his guts spill onto the deck like watery porridge. Rum is salvation, but also a curse. It turns screams in your head into laughter, turns a knife in your back into a dinner joke, turns fear into delusions of invincibility. You saw a double amputee sailor charge the Spanish with a rum bottle in his mouth, yelling, "I'm drunk death," before a blade pierced his heart. You know this because you dragged his body to the sea, then drank the rest of his rum. You don't know when rum became the ship's unit of sanity. No one asks, "You okay?" They ask, "How many swigs today?" More means you're closer to madness. Fewer means you're either dead or plotting to kill someone. You're at the middle, enough to stumble, not yet puking your liver. You drink to forget. But you remember. Clearly, every glance from the guy next to you when you grab a bigger biscuit, every mocking laugh when you drop a rope coil, and most importantly, you remember who stabbed you in this morning's chaos. Not the enemy, one of your own, a shallow slash across your ribs. Not deep, but enough for you to turn, see his panicked eyes turn blank. "Thought you were someone else," he said, then walked off. But you don't forget, because the wound still stings, and rum doesn't erase that look. You start watching him. He sleeps near the water barrel, knife under his pillow. He dreams a lot, startles easily. Whenever someone steps close, his hand twitches instinctively. You know that feeling, the guilt of a guilty man, and you start waiting for your chance, not for revenge, to settle the debt. At sea, fairness isn't an ideal, it's a survival law. Once, he's drunk, lying back, muttering about his mother. You stand there, holding a short, unnotched knife. But you do nothing. Not because you forgive, because 10 pairs of eyes are watching. On this ship, no one speaks, but every move is noticed. One extra stab, one untimely death, and you could be tied to a mast and dropped into the sea with a stone on your feet. No questions asked. Rum doesn't help you forget. It just makes you accept that you're rotting, that your crew might kill you. That fear never leaves, just morphs into red behind your eyes, trembling hands when tying ropes, and a bitter laugh in the night. And then the next morning, you wake clutching an empty bottle, like an old lover, mouth dry, head heavy, back aching from sleeping wrong on a pile of ropes. One day, the captain announces, "We're hitting a new port soon. Sell goods, trade, and relax." The ship erupts, not for money, but for the chance to drink something other than dregs. But you're not happy, because you know, docking means new stabbings. Someone who looked at you wrong once might slide a blade in a tavern. No questions asked. You sit among the cheering crowd, quietly pouring the last swig of rum from your leather flask. You smell the familiar mix: liquor, sweat, salt, and unresolved hatred. An old guy next to you clinks his flask, muttering, "Rum's the forgetting drug." But it just helps you remember exactly who hurt you. You nod, then glance at the ship's corner, where the guy who stabbed you sits, laughing with his lackeys, and you know, it's time, not today, but soon. You tuck your knife away, take another swig, and sit there, among the drunken crowd, smiling, hands shaking, because you know better than anyone. On this ship, rum doesn't make you forget. It makes you remember longer, and more dangerously. Especially when everyone's got a knife in their boot, a small axe behind their back, and a piss-smelling blanket. On the deck, No word is more meaningless than loyalty. It's a concept slapped on the mouth of someone who smiled at you today, but might aim a gun at your head tomorrow night. Trusting someone here isn't brave. It's scheduled suicide. When the ship docks, the captain rallies the brothers to unload cargo, and the crew buzzes like flies on spoiled jam. Everyone pretends to be united, hauling barrels, tying ropes, carrying guns, but eyes dart like snakes hunting, each man quietly tracking time, weighing profits, and waiting for a signal to betray if needed. There's an unwritten rule: whoever finds a better deal can flip sides, even flip the ship. The captain knows this, so he keeps 2 pistols on his hips, a knife in his boot, and a bodyguard who sleeps beside him with eyes open, literally. That guy had his eyelids cut in Tortuga for dozing off, and ever since, he only blinks by looking down. You once saw a small mutiny. The old first mate, who patted your shoulder, saying "we're family," teamed up with 3 others, drew guns at midnight, stormed the deck, and shouted, "I'm the new captain." Before he finished, his head exploded like a pumpkin from a bullet fired in the dark. Who shot? No one knows. Maybe the captain, maybe someone wanting his favor, or just someone annoyed by loud yelling at night. The next morning, his body was tossed overboard with a whisper. Loyalty only exists in promises not yet betrayed. You start to understand how a pirate ship really works, not on laws, on a balance of fear and gain. Whoever holds more gain has power. Whoever spreads fear at the right moment keeps their life. Whoever spreads fear at the wrong moment gets skewered with a fish fork. During loot splits, everyone laughs like it's a party, but hands stay near knife hilts. You saw a guy stabbed for accidentally taking an extra gold coin. His crime wasn't greed, it was getting caught. The guy who stabbed him was the one laughing beside him while counting coins. Later, he patted the corpse's shoulder and said, "Sorry, my hand slipped." From then, you learn to hide your share in the oddest places, stuffed in your shoe's sole, sewn into your sleeve, even wrapped in dried fish guts to throw off snoopers. Trust anyone? Never. You can drink with them, laugh with them, even save their life in battle, but the next morning, be ready to press a gun to their neck if they step into your hold without knocking. Once, you overheard 2 sailors plotting to kill the captain and split power. You said nothing. But that night, you placed a rusty knife on one's hammock. He got the message. No one died that night, but you know one slip, and you'll be the one skewered for hearing too much. On this ship, loyalty is temporary. It lasts until the price is high enough, or the chance is close enough. A guy named Miguel, always smiling, cooking for the crew, telling jokes at night, once killed 3 men in one night because they whispered about changing course. He doused their bodies with rum, burned them clean, and served breakfast the next morning like nothing happened. When someone asked, "Where'd those guys go?" he shrugged, "Probably drunk and sleeping in the hold." Everyone nodded. No one asked more. Because everyone knows, ask too much, and you're next. You start to wonder, is anyone on this ship truly loyal to anyone? Maybe, but if they are, they're already dead. Still alive, they're the ones who keep quiet, step back at the right time, draw knives faster than you think. You once trusted a guy, then saw him signal the captain with a hand gesture during dinner. Not sure what it meant, but the next day, the man you split loot with fell off the ship while tying a sail. No one cried, no one dove to save him. That night, you sit by the gunpowder barrels, wiping your knife with a dirty rag. The wind stings your face, the crescent moon hangs like a scythe. A blind old man sitting nearby mutters. Back then loyalty meant keeping your word. Now keeping your knife from slipping is enough. You don't reply, just grip your knife tighter, scanning the faces drinking rum, faces that were once comrades, and could kill you the moment you turn your back. Because on this ship, friendship is a myth. Loyalty is fleeting, but a gun, always loaded. And sometimes, the click of a hammer, that's the truest sound you hear all day. Sadly, that's not the only thing deciding who lives or dies. Some deaths come not from guns, but something worse. Infection. And when a wound starts to stink, fester, and throb, until you hear your pulse pounding behind your neck like a drum, you know, it's time to see the doctor. The only problem, there's no doctor on this ship. Just men who've held a razor, have experience, cutting human flesh, and like being called healers. The guy playing that role is a skeletal man, teeth black from chewing tobacco, eyes always red like he's feverish. No one knows where he learned his trade. Some say he was a butcher. Others say he worked in a brothel and knew how to deliver babies with a hammer. You only know one thing: he always carries a wooden box with a rusty razor, chili powder, needle and thread, and a spoon. The first time you met him was when the sailor next to you got a nail through his foot. A small wound seemed fine. 3 days later, his foot swelled like a coconut, turning purple-black, stinking like a dead fish. The healer came, glanced at it, nodded like he was planning a new recipe, and asked how much rum you got left. Like sawing off a foot was a deal needing a deposit. When it's your turn, the gash from the traitor's dagger still hasn't healed and shows signs of spreading. You're shoved into the supply hold. It's a morgue, torture chamber, and operating room. You lie on an empty barrel, the stench of dried fish, old rum, and rat shit mixing, while he pulls out his wooden box, whistling a tune no one recognizes. "No need for anesthesia," he says. "We used chili." You think he's joking, until he pours chili powder straight into your wound. First it stings, then it burns. Then it's like someone poured boiling oil on your skin. You grit your teeth, eyes watering, hands clutching the shirt of the guy holding you down. He laughs. Good. Feeling means you're alive. Next comes the razor, not to cut deep, to scrape, scraping the infected flesh. The sound of the blade grinding bone makes you nauseous. You hear every noise, like a knife dragging on wet wood. Each time he pauses to wipe the blade, you thank God for a break, but then he starts again. No mask, no gloves, just a rum-soaked rag he uses to wipe the blade, and his nose in one swipe. After the flesh, the stitches, rusty needle, hemp thread. You don't know what hurts more, the wound or his tobacco-reeking hands. When it's sewn, he pours a cloudy liquid on the stitches, calls it herbal rum, but it smells like piss mixed with ash. You don't ask, you just breathe, so faintly you might stop. Then you're tucked into a dark corner of the hold, next to a guy who lost an ear to a falling knife, and an old black woman, supposedly someone's wife from 10 years ago. You lie there, amid ragged breaths, coughs and scratching, like a night orchestra. But you're alive, and the wound doesn't spread. It smells, itches, oozes, but doesn't spread. Everyone ends up with him, sooner or later. Broken arm, splintered with a wooden spoon and rope, gut torn, sewn with sail thread, blind in one eye, patched with a bottle cork and tree sap. You saw him operate on a guy's stomach with a kitchen knife, rum, and a prayer. The guy lived 4 days, then died, not from the surgery, from eating poisoned fish the next day. Once he got a special patient, the captain, feverish, vomiting, delirious. The ship went silent. He walked into the private cabin, wooden box in hand, chili powder, trailing like toxic smoke. 2 hours later, he came out, washed his hands with rum, and grinned. Fine, just sea wind in his liver. The captain woke the next day, punched him for pinning me down, and wiping my ass like the deck, but kept him, because there's no one else. On this ship, you don't pray for health. You pray you don't need the healer, because if you do, you might live, but you won't be you anymore. A missing finger, a scarred chunk of flesh, a memory of a scraping knife. They stay forever. You see why he's lasted so long. Not because anyone likes him, because everyone's scared to learn his job if he dies. One night, as you wipe your knife by the gunpowder barrels, the salty, cold sea wind like a threat, the self-styled doctor strolls by, glances at the stitches on your arm. Looks good, he nods, then hands you a crumpled paper. You open it, a hand-drawn sketch, razor, chili powder, hemp thread, and a cracked heart. That's the prescription. He winks. In case I die, then walks off. You stare at the paper, then at the pitch-black sky, and you think, if he dies, who'll hold the razor for you next time? You? Who knows? On this ship, every role is self-appointed, as long as you live long enough to claim it. And maybe that's why the drunken guy with gold teeth like burnt coins is called the map decoder. No one knows where he learned to read maps. No one's sure he can read them at all. But as long as he can scribble a few curves on a wrinkled goat skin, add a couple of bright red X marks and a snake-coiled mast symbol, he's trusted like a pope, pointing a compass to hell. Because out at sea, nothing gives pirates more hope than a scrap of a treasure map. And like every naive fool on their first voyage, you believed it too. The first map you saw was an old, crumpled sheet, hidden inside a dried fish's guts. An old man showed it to you like he was handing over a state secret, his voice low and gravelly. This is the way to Drowned Island, where mad Captain Galago's treasure is buried. You looked, just a few scribbled lines, a tree sketch, and an arrow. He nodded solemnly. If I die, you carry on the journey. 3 days later, he died from drinking lamp oil. You kept the paper, not because you believed, but because you didn't have toilet paper. Then you slowly realized, this whole ship runs on treasure maps. The cook has one, the quartermaster has another. The captain, he's got 3, and swears they're so real, the ink's guarded by dragon's blood. Once, 2 guys nearly killed each other, arguing whether the X was on the east or west shore. That night, both slept in the hold, heads bashed, eyes bruised, and still clutching their maps. Treasure maps are the oldest scam at sea, and the one everyone willingly falls for, because they bring hope. Not hope of surviving, but hope that if you survive, you'll be rich. Rich enough to stop washing your face with piss. Rich enough to buy a bed without rats. But of course you never find anything. You start to understand. Not everyone who believes in maps is stupid. They're just desperate. That charred scrap is a collective hallucination drug. And when everyone dreams, laughs, and digs deep under a scorching sun, at least they're not thinking about the death waiting in every festering wound. So you keep a map too. Scribble some lines, dot some X. When someone asks, you shrug. Heard it came from a lost French captain in 1477. And just like that, a guy hands you a rum bottle to trade for a chance. You don't refuse. You drink the rum. The map lines your shoes. Who knows? Maybe it's real. Because in a world where razors save lives and piss washes faces, finding treasure on a burnt scrap of paper might not be the wildest thing you've heard. And sometimes, just 1 X is enough to keep a sailor alive another day, just to keep dreaming. But dreams are dreams, and waking up means your nose faces the sea's worst enemy. The smell, not gunpowder, not rum, not even blood. It's the eternal stench on this rotting ship. A symphony of smells from hell, human shit, spoiled fish, and despair. You never really get used to it. After a while, your brain just compromises. It labels the horrific smells normal, because otherwise you'd puke every time you open your eyes. Step out of the cramped sleeping hold in the morning, and the stench hits like a demon's slap. First is the human shit, pungent, warm, acrid, like half-burnt rotten paper. There's no bathroom on the ship, just a wooden plank hanging off the stern, where you squat, hoping waves don't splash back in your face, praying a strong gust doesn't blow you into the sea mid-shit. Once, you saw a guy slip while handling business. He fell into the sea in a pose no one wants to be caught in. Arse up, hands flailing, eyes bulging. No one jumped in. A minute later, sharks came. 3 minutes later, nothing left to fish out. Since then, everyone goes earlier, faster, and no one dares read while shitting. Next is the spoiled fish smell. Fish hang all over the ship, not to eat fresh, to dry, to store. But fish on this ship never fully dry. They drip, they ooze grease. They stink. You walk past the galley feeling like you're passing an ocean's graveyard. The fishy reek, mixed with rotten wood and burnt old grease, creates a scent only describable as sin. Some days, rain hits the deck, washing over fish carcasses, then floods the lower hold. You wake up with water to your ankles, mixed with rainwater, old blood, fish grease, and a bit of rat shit. The guy next to you says, add some rum, and it's soup. You force a laugh, then keep wading. And then, the biggest smell, the one you can't pinpoint, can't wash off, can't escape, the smell of despair. It's soaked in the canvas, in the ship's wood, in your hair, in your nails. You see it when someone stares too long at a knife, when someone counts rusty coins and whispers, I'll be rich, when the cook grills fish in tears, missing his mother's soup. The smell has no name, but you know it instantly. You feel it clearest at dawn, when everyone's still asleep, and you're alone on deck. Light breeze, sky brightening, sea calm, but something in the air presses your chest, a damp, cold, doubtful feeling about everything happening. You're not dead, but you can't be sure you're alive. And that feeling, that smell, blankets the ship. The captain doesn't care. He smells shit like it's fresh leather, familiar, even proud. He once said, The stinkier the ship, the realer it is. Smell good, that's an illusion. And in the end, you can't argue. Some rub mint oil in their noses. Some burn dried orange peels to cleanse. Some chew raw garlic. But it all just makes the monstrous smell more complex, like adding perfume to a corpse. Once a new guy, young, bright-faced, hair still fragrant, pulled a tiny perfume bottle from his bag. The crew laughed like maniacs. An hour later, he was tied upside down to a mast, sprayed with his own perfume, and left for flies to swarm. Lesson on this ship: don't try to mask the real smell. It fights back. You learn to accept it. The smell is proof of life, however rotten. Every whiff of shit proves someone's still eating. Every drop of fish grease means there's fish to eat. Every rum-soaked breath shows someone's not dead yet. And when a day passes with the smell unchanged, that's a comfort. One day, you wash your face with rainwater, then lean down to sniff your shirt. You don't flinch anymore. You don't feel nauseous anymore. You just think, yep, same as yesterday. And you feel oddly relieved. Because the smell, even if it's a mix of human shit, spoiled fish and despair, is still there. And as long as it's there, the ship's still running, people are still breathing, and you haven't sunk to become bait for something that doesn't need a nose to kill. But that ship still running isn't something you can take for granted, because sometimes a single hidden reef under calm waves, or a drunk helmsman's bad call, is enough to turn ship running into ship grounded. And when that happens, like it did this morning, with a shudder and the crack of wood like breaking human bones, the first question isn't what happened, but who's to blame. Bad news, it's you. Doesn't matter that you were sleeping. Doesn't matter that you were scrubbing blood from the forward hold, or feverish from a tooth infection. To the crew, blame is an art, and you, the newest, the least connected, with no kin to the first mate or mast rigger, are the perfect scapegoat. He was on watch last night. Didn't I see him dozing? He was sneaking looks at the drowned island map. Maybe he did it on purpose. Accusations pour out before you can comb your hair or put on a shirt. You're dragged onto the deck under a blazing sun, facing a half-drunk, half-thirsty mob, looking for a reason to vent their rage over a ship that won't move. The first mate points at you, face swollen from the captain's scolding, and yells, "You slept on watch." You stammer, "I didn't. I wasn't on watch." But your words are worth less than spit on the deck. Reason? Worthless. Feelings? Being alive is enough. The captain appears, tattered coat, dark circles under his eyes, pistol in hand, and asks one question: "Anyone dead yet?" The crowd shakes their heads. He nods. Light punishment. Then, light here means your feet are tied, a rope's wrapped around your waist, and you're thrown overboard to check the damage under the hull. Meaning, dive down and see if any rocks pierced the ship. With naked eyes, a stone tied to your back to help you sink faster. The morning sea is ice cold, salty enough to make your nosebleed rise. Underwater, you see the ship's dark hull, covered in moss and barnacles. A large crack runs along the port side, like a fracture in a whale's jaw. You only get a glimpse before yanking the rope to be pulled up, your lungs screaming like they'll burst. You gasp on the deck, eyes bloodshot, mouth bleeding from biting your lip. The first mate asks, "What you see?" You tell them. Silence, and the captain sighs. "That's 3 days to patch the hull." The first mate shrugs. "What about this guy?" He points at you. The captain glances over, spits on the deck. 2 watches straight, no food, then walks off. You're added to the potential traitor list, not because you actually messed up, but because you're the easiest reason for everyone to ignore the truth. The ship's rotting, the leadership's dumb, and no one knows where they're going. You're the release valve, the lawful dump for their frustration and despair. 3 days of a stuck ship is 3 days of hell. No one rests. No one's clean. You haul wood, scrub fish blood, fetch water, pull ropes, and when you're too exhausted to walk, get kicked in the ribs with a "that's your fault." Someone throws rotten food in your face. Someone scrawls "traitor" on your shirt with charcoal. And you, though you know you're innocent, have no strength to argue. At night, you sleep on the deck, no hammock, no cover, next to a gunpowder jar, and shards of a broken freshwater barrel from the crash. Every time you close your eyes, you hear whispers. "He's bad luck. Since he came, it's been trouble. Maybe we should leave him at the next island." And you understand on this ship, truth doesn't save anyone. Only playing the right role keeps you alive. On the fourth morning, the captain declares, "Ship's ready to sail." The crew cheers. No one mentions you anymore. The first mate slaps your shoulder, forces a grin. "Good job," then turns away. You stand there, eyes empty, holding a rope you tied 50 times in 3 days, and you smile, not from joy, but because you now know anything goes wrong, you could be the reason. The ship sails again, the seas calm, but trust doesn't return. You start living like a shadow, speaking little, watching closely, smiling faintly. Because you've learned a rule no one teaches: when the ship runs aground, everyone needs someone to blame, and if you don't quickly point to someone else, you're the one thrown overboard. The problem is, sometimes, even if you've done nothing wrong, you're still the target, simply because you exist, because you survived, because your back's turned to someone holding a knife. On this ship, you don't need to kill to be hated. You just need to not die. And so you realize there's a club no one admits to, but everyone's joined. The Backstabbers Club. No sign, no hours, because it runs 24/7 everywhere, as long as there's a turned back and a sharp knife. The first mate whispers to the captain that the gunner's planning a mutiny. The gunner tells the cooks the sail rigger's smuggling goods into the wine hold. The cook whispers to you, "Watch oarsman number 3. I saw him hide something in his pants." You nod, but that night, when someone asks, you point to the cook, not because you're a bastard, because you want to live. Here, honesty is a stone tied to your neck. Hold it too long, and you sink. Everyone has a list of suspects, and a list of who to blame if caught doing wrong. Sometimes the lists overlap. Even better, you were almost skewered just for sleeping in the right spot. The guy in the hammock next to you, the captain's trusted man, was stabbed in the night. No one saw, no one knew. Morning came, he was dead, and you, being nearby, became the only one with a chance. Never mind you had no knife. Never mind you were feverish. Never mind the unhealed wound from diving under the grounded ship. Didn't matter. They needed a name. You begged the captain to check everyone's weapons, got lucky, and found a bloodied knife stuffed in the gunner's coat pocket. He denied it, but denials weren't enough. Tied, beaten, then kicked into the sea with an iron anchor. From then on, you weren't invisible. You were dangerous. Not because you're strong, because you learned to look back. You understand here, no one's your friend forever. Every story told today could be evidence against you tomorrow. Every laugh today could be a reason someone says you're plotting. Someone told a joke too loud, gone by morning. Someone got drunk, bragged about keeping a small gold piece. 3 days later, his body was found in the water hold, eyes wide open. You don't laugh loud anymore. Don't sit near anyone too long. Don't share your life story, because one detail could make you suspicious. Once, you tried staying out of it. Tried being neutral. A teammate, tall, quiet, was rumored to have stolen the captain's map. The crew went wild. You stayed silent. Didn't point. Didn't accuse. Said nothing. Result? You were labeled a sympathizer. That night, someone cut your hammock's ropes, sending your head crashing onto the deck. You woke with blood dripping from your forehead and a note in your hand. Stay silent again. You follow him. From then, you learn to laugh at the right time, nod in the right place, and when needed, point in the right direction. Not because you believe, because you need to live. And when someone disappears, you're the first to say, "I heard him whispering with that guy last night." No one checks, but everyone nods. One day, you see the captain standing alone, staring at the sea. He speaks softly, not turning. You know on this ship, I don't need loyal men. I need men who shut up at the right time and speak up at the right time. You don't reply, because that's you. The Backstabbers Club doesn't need membership cards. Just a moment, a chance, a slip-up, and a knife. And if you haven't been stabbed yet, maybe you're holding the knife without realizing it. And you know what's scariest? Not being stabbed, but getting used to stabbing first to avoid being stabbed. When you start thinking, that guy looked at me too long. When you see someone's hand too close to the anchor rope and hide it first. When you no longer feel guilt watching someone dragged to the sea, just relief that today, it's not you. On this ship, no one calls it betrayal. They call it surviving smart. And you, now, have passed the beginner's course. Congratulations, you're a full member of the sea's scariest club. and it never closes. But even the club's oldest member will forget their dagger, their dangers, and their own name when a shout rings from the crow's nest. Merchant ship, ahead. Portuguese flag. No orders needed. No discussion. Every survivor on the ship springs up like lightning-struck corpses, eyes blazing, because this is the moment everyone craves a raid. This is what keeps pirates from hanging themselves. After days of eating dried fish and scratching rashes, a clean hit, a worthy prize, and a chance to die in gold, not rags. No one talks as the ship speeds up. Everyone grips weapons, checks ammo, tucks spare knives in boots. The smell of blood seems to linger in the wood from the last attack, but no one cares. They grin, not from joy, but because their brains are so used to adrenaline that without killing, it'll kill you from within. Stand by the railing, wind whipping your face like a lash. One hand holds an axe, the other shades your eyes to see the target ship, sluggish, its white sails taut. In that moment, you're no longer the deck scrubber, you're a predator, a sea beast trained by hunger, shame, and grudges. The clash starts so fast you don't recall who struck first. Just a throat-ripping scream, then dozens of figures swinging across ropes, leaping onto the enemy deck like a rain of living dead. Blood sprays the air like red fireworks, metal clangs, screams echo, bones crack, and yes, laughter rings out everywhere. You hack a merchant sailor down. He doesn't raise his sword in time. His eyes widen, like he can't grasp why he's dying while just carrying spices and cloth. You don't think twice. You charge on. Another guy's head is smashed against a mast. One crawls, trying to reach the alarm bell, but his hand's severed before he touches it. 17 minutes. That's all it takes. The enemy ship surrenders. Survivors are tied, piled like rice sacks. The dead are kicked overboard or shoved aside to clear the way for the main event. Looting. The cargo hold opens, and you hold your breath. Not enough to fill the ship, but enough to make the crew erupt. Thick, gleaming coins, stamped with crosses, silver jewelry, etched with saints' names, pearl strings, turquoise-set watches, and most precious, crates of fine, unopened wine. Cheers explode. The captain laughs. You dogs. Tonight, we sleep on treasure. The splitting begins, not by rules, by blood spilled. The more wounded, the bigger the share. Kill 2 or more, you pick first. You've got a light gash on your arm, negligible, so you get a small bag with a few gold coins and a ring fallen by a corpse's foot. You take it and don't know what to do. For the first time in your pirate life, you hold something that could buy freedom, but you also know it's a curse, because the moment you hold it, someone on this ship might kill you in the night to take it. That night, the ship goes mad. People dance on the deck, wine's poured into gold goblets. Someone wears a dress, stolen from the passenger's hold, singing off-key Italian. You sit quietly, your gold bag tied to your belt in 3 layers of cloth. Your heart races, not from the fight, but from fear. You've just become valuable, and then you see him. An old guy, once despised for only cleaning water barrels, now lying on a pile of silk, holding a silver watch, muttering, "Finally, I'll die rich." The next morning, he's dead, drunk, fell from the main deck to the hold, neck snapped. No one cries, they just take the watch. You realize one thing, a successful raid isn't about living long, it's about dying pretty. No one on this ship dreams of old age, they dream of a stab in a silk suit, with 2 gold coins on their eyes, and a bloody grin. You look at your gold bag, then tie it tighter, not to keep, but to remind yourself today, you're valuable, and that's the most dangerous thing you've ever owned at sea. Not because others are jealous, but because the fate of someone with gold in the middle of the ocean is like holding a burning torch in a dry forest. You're the brightest, the most noticeable, and the easiest to catch, and you got caught. Quick, clean, and with no logic beyond the stupidity of fate. It was early morning, your ship had just docked at a nameless small port to buy fresh water and sell some of the cloth looted from the Portuguese ship raid the day before. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. You were assigned to go ashore with 3 others to haul water barrels and trade a few gold coins for bread. Simple. But while you stood waiting at the gangplank, the bag of gold under your shirt brushed against your belt, and a guard saw it. He didn't ask anything, didn't need to. A whistle pierced the air. You turned, too late. In no time, guards swarmed from every corner like flies on a corpse. You bolted, but a blow to the back of your head turned the world into a blinding white. You woke up between 4 stone walls, neck aching, head throbbing, hands bound with hemp rope until your wrists bled, and you heard the first words from a man in a fox fur hat. "Congratulations, you'll hang at dawn." No trial, no name asked. No chance to explain, you're just a deck scrubber who knows how to use a knife. With the gold bag on you and the ship anchored offshore, you're clearly a pirate, and the law here is simple. A tree, a rope, a prayer, then eternal silence. That night, you sat in a rotting cell next to a one-eyed Irishman. He whispered, "First time." You nodded. "Good. The noose won't hurt much if you hold your breath first." He chuckled like he was telling a Saturday night joke. Then he pointed at the ceiling, where someone had scratched a misspelled prayer. "Lord save me soel." You asked, "Who wrote that?" He shrugged. "Guy hanged 3 days before me, used his fingernails. Then he slept." You didn't. You just counted your heartbeats. Each tick echoed in your head, like a hammer on a coffin. Before dawn, they dragged you out. No one spoke. No music. No drums. Just the scrape of soldiers' boots on stone, and the whistle of wind through the rope already tied to a branch. Under your feet was a shaky wooden platform. Above your head, a noose still wet with the last man's sweat. You didn't want to cry, but tears leaked out, as if your body itself was saying, "This is it." A soldier read the execution order. You didn't hear clearly. Your ears rang, but one thing got through. As evidence of illegal spoils, the prisoner is sentenced to death by sea law. Spoils, a few gold coins. Yours? Stolen. But it didn't matter anymore. You tried to say last words. Your throat was dry as dust. All you managed was, then you laughed. Because what else was there to say? The soldier looked at you, waiting for a confession. You just said, "Lord save me soel," and someone kicked the platform. The world didn't go dark right away. Your neck was crushed. Your legs jerked. Your tongue stiffened. Your eyes bulged, blood vessels bursting under the corneas. You heard your neck bones crack, but your brain kept screaming, kept remembering the sea, the blood, the piss, the treasure maps, until darkness crashed in like a wave with no shore. But then you woke up, a kick to your chest. You coughed, choking. Air stabbed your lungs like nails. In front of you was the one-eyed Irishman. He was panting, blood dripping from his forehead. "I cut the rope in time," he whispered. Guards changed shifts, ignored you for 2 minutes. He untied the noose, then pulled you to run. You both tore through the fish market, amid shouts, the stench of salt, and the yells of townsfolk who didn't understand what was happening. Gunshots, screams. You didn't stop. Ran on instinct. Ran because you weren't ready to die. Ran because you once believed you'd die in gold, not swinging with a misspelled prayer. When you and the Irishman jumped into a small boat, cut the sail ropes, and pushed off from shore, you didn't smile. You just vomited. Vomited everything in your gut. Vomited the fear, the pain, and the thought that you'd died, but lived. And as you watched the sun rise on the horizon, you whispered, this time with correct spelling, "Lord save my soul." But you knew God doesn't follow pirates. Only knives, ropes, and a companion crazy enough to cut a noose while you dangled in the air. And from that moment, you understood, at sea, surviving isn't luck, it's a skill. It's the art of being invisible, of knowing when to shut up, when to vanish from sight. Because the brutal truth is those who don't die early aren't stronger, faster, or blessed. They're just better at blending into the shadows. After the hanging escape, you and the Irishman didn't return to the old ship. No one's dumb enough to climb back aboard a place that betrayed them. Instead, you joined a merchant ship needing laborers, used fake names, invented new backstories, and most importantly, spoke no more than 5 sentences a day. You learned to walk without sound, to breathe, so no one saw your chest move, to keep your eyes on the deck when questioned. You became the scum beneath the scum, invisible, silent, heartless. The Irishman taught you one survival rule. People don't kill what they don't see. Sounds funny, but you started noticing. On the ship, the loud, flashy, or overly eager were always the first to take a knife when trouble came. Meanwhile, those who looked like they were scratching their feet or wiping old barrels lived longest. A short, hunchbacked guy named Rat survived 8 battles, 4 captain changes, 3 mutinies. Why? No one remembered his face. Once he was stabbed by mistake, and the attacker had to ask, "Wait, who are you?" You copied him, cut your hair short, changed your walk, altered your voice. When someone asked, "Hey, you the new guy?" you just smiled and said, "Been here 3 years." You forgot. It worked every time. Because no one was sure if they'd met you or not. You became a moving patch of shadow, present, but never the center. Once, a big guy got a whim to check everyone, because his knife went missing. You knew he suspected you, but you didn't react, didn't panic, didn't resist, just kept your eyes on the deck, and continued wiping ropes. He moved on, found someone else to suspect. 4 days later, the knife was found under the captain's pillow. The big guy was thrown overboard. You lived again. You never ate the biggest share, never slept near weapons, never laughed the loudest, or stayed silent too long. You became the perfect survivor, bland, unremarkable, with no story to tell, no grudges to remember. Once, you met an old crewmate from the ship where you were blamed for the grounding. He squinted, then asked, "You look familiar. You that guy whose name starts with Gear?" You smiled, "Maybe, but you probably got me mixed up." He nodded, turned away. You exhaled, because that's how you win. Not with a sword, with being forgotten. The Irishman wasn't like that. He drank too much, talked too much, and one day, retold the hanging story in a Tortuga tavern, called Burnt Cat's Tail. 3 days later, he was gone. No one asked. You knew what happened. That night, you burned the crude sketch he once gave you, a map to an island, with my grave ready, as he used to joke. You kept your smiles shorter, your footing firmer, your knife under your pillow, and your memory like a blank page no one could write a name on. On the ship, there's a saying, the survivor is the one no one remembers existed. Sad but true. Those with nicknames, achievements, stories, all dead. You're that guy, the shadow in the galley corner, the hand pulling sails never showing its face. And because of that, you're still breathing. One morning, you heard the old ship you served on sank. Ambushed, no survivors. You stood in a fish market, holding a piece of dried fish, and smiled faintly, not out of glee, but because you knew once again, not standing out, not being famous, not being remembered, is the longest lasting lesson the sea ever taught you. Until one day, every rule you carefully guarded was thrown overboard with one sentence. That guy, make him first mate. You looked up from the half-tied rope, thinking you misheard. But no, the new captain, a fat Dutchman with a beard like a singed mop, was pointing at you. He didn't know your name, just that you'd been around a while, and haven't died, shut up at the right time, and aren't bad with a blade. 3 golden criteria for promotion on a ship, with no rules but survival. You were pulled onto the deck, pushed in front of the crew. They didn't clap, didn't cheer. They just stared, the stare of hungry dogs weighing whether to eat their own. And you understood. Good news, you have power. Bad news, everyone wants to kill you. Being first mate on a pirate ship isn't a medal, it's a living target. The first to be thrown, if there's a mutiny. The one blamed if plans fail. The one keeping order among hyenas itching for blood. Before you were a shadow, now you're a lantern at night. Everyone sees, everyone aims. For the first 3 days, as first mate, you didn't sleep, didn't dare. You knew which knives were hidden, where, who glanced at you too long, who you scolded yesterday for tying ropes wrong. You didn't give orders by shouting, but with a look, short, precise, no room for feedback. Anyone who argued, you didn't debate, you just remembered. And that night, they were assigned to clean the piss barrels mid-hold, where rats the size of puppies bite without warning. You learned to stand in the middle, not too close to the captain, who could betray you any moment to please someone else, not too close to the crew, who'd stick a spike in your gut for taking my rum share. You stood just high enough to have a voice, low enough that in a riot, they'd aim up, not at you. Once, the cook sold some salt to another fishing boat. You caught him. He should have lost his tongue, but you didn't punish him. You brought him to the deck, listed his crime in front of everyone, then let him go. The crew was stunned, but 2 days later, he cut off his own finger, placed it outside your cabin with a note, "Thanks for sparing me." From then he was loyal to the bone. You learned sometimes loyalty comes from fear of losing a second chance, not from respect. Being first mate had perks. You picked your share early, a less rotten meat, slept in a hammock instead of on wood. But because of that, every laugh you let out was noted. Every frown silenced the ship. A casual remark could spark a plot or squash a mutiny. And you had to learn caution, not like a coward, but like a snake in the reeds, knowing when to rise, when to lie still. One day, a kid, new to the ship, was carving a small wooden figure, shaping it like a person. You asked, "What's that?" He smiled. "A statue of you." You weren't touched. You took it, smiled, then burned it. In front of him. "I don't need statues. I need people who tie ropes without killing anyone." From then, he stopped carving, but learned to tie ropes faster than anyone, and you lived a few more weeks. Then came the day you were attacked. Not by enemies, by 3 old crewmen, punished by the previous first mate, now after you for justice. They rushed your cabin at midnight. An iron hook, a broken bottle, a dull knife. You killed 2, the 3rd escaped. Morning came, you dragged the bodies to the deck, left the blood, said nothing. Everyone understood. From then on, no one dared call first mate an easy target. But you know, every day, at least 3 people think about replacing you. And maybe, one day, you'll wake with a knife at your throat. But until then, you'll stand, watch, and live, because you didn't ask for this role. But now you have it, and you'll keep it, not with glory, but with instinct. Because being first mate isn't about being remembered, it's about living long enough until someone else is fool enough to take your place, so you can go back to what you're best at, being a shadow, again. But now, a shadow that's held a knife, and survived being a target. Yet even shadows shudder when they hear, Mary Bloodtooth's ship is heading this way. And you know, what's coming isn't a joke, isn't a threat, because you've seen the aftermath female pirates leave. And you understand one thing clearer than any survival lesson. Female pirates aren't legends, and they spare no one. No one at sea speaks of them in a normal tone. They're not delicate girls wielding swords like in folk tales. They're vengeance incarnate, sea storms in dresses, hatred soaked in blood. Nothing in the world is scarier than a woman with a reason to hate it, and armed with cannons, knives, guns, and a crew stripped of humanity. You heard of Mary Bloodtooth back when you were an oarsman. One said she castrated 5 men alive for whistling as she passed. Another said she burned a port to kill 1 traitor. All true, or close enough. No one survives her ship without losing something. An eye, a hand, a piece of soul. And now, her ship is closing in. Your ship, low on water, captain drunk on rum, cannons with half the ammo, has no choice but to brace for the worst. Some want to turn back. The captain slams the table, yelling, "Run and live, how we don't kneel to a woman's skirt." The crew cheers, not because they believe, but because they fear a bullet in the back if they don't. You stand on the deck, watching her mast approach like a ghost. Mary's ship is painted black, no flag, no emblem, just a hull scarred with bullet holes and blood. It needs no introduction. Its silence is the scariest greeting. When the clash hits, there's no cannon roar, just grappling hooks thrown, ropes taut. Then, female pirates flood your ship like starving beasts. No chants, no screams, just silent, precise, brutal. One man's jaw is hooked and yanked into the air. Another's tendons are cut before he can draw his sword. You try to fight, but realize they don't fight to win. They fight to destroy. And through the smoke, blood, and moans, you see her. Mary Bloodtooth, tall, cloak torn by wind, holding an axe as big as a bull's back, eyes with no whites, just black pits like an abyss. She doesn't shout, doesn't smile, just walks, step by step, cutting down men. No one dares approach. When your captain charges, yelling, "You're a woman, go to hell," she tilts her head, then swings once across his waist. Half his body falls off the ship like a log. No one fights anymore. Your ship surrenders, not in words, in bodies. Weapons drop, blood pools, limbs tremble. And Mary steps onto the deck, glancing over the survivors. Who's the first mate? Her voice low, like the sea at a dead tide. Every eye turns to you. You step forward, not from courage, because you know if you don't, someone else will name you, and you'd rather walk than be dragged. Mary looks at you, her gaze like a knife, slicing to your skull. "Want to live?" she asks. You swallow, nod. "Good," she says. My ship needs blood cleaners. You live, but not on your old ship. You're moved to Mary's, with a few other lucky, or unlucky, ones spared. Her ship has no verbal orders, no watch schedules. Everything runs on the rhythm of blood and glances. You're not called by name, just by a whistle. Mess up, a slap with the flat of an axe is the lightest punishment. But strangely, her ship is clean, orderly, chillingly efficient. No one argues, no one jokes, but no one starves, no one's abandoned, and no one betrays. You start to understand this isn't an empire of power, it's one of absolute fear. Mary doesn't need to kill to enforce discipline, because everyone's ready to kill themselves if they fail. This is the ship of last survivors, those who left pride, real names, and pasts behind. And you keep living, cleaning blood from the deck, sewing sails, learning to bow deep when she passes, because you know you're not special. You're just one of dozens who thought female pirates are legends until their axe grazed your neck. And this time, you live, not because you're skilled, but because she hasn't chosen to kill. Today, at least. Tomorrow, no one knows, because women at sea don't need reasons to be cruel. They just need a memory painful enough to last forever. And Mary Bloodtooth, you're certain, has a hold full of those, neatly stacked beside the gunpowder and the corpses of captains who thought they were invincible. But the one thing she doesn't control, and doesn't bother touching, is what even axes can't cut. Curses, whispers in the night, and the smile of the invisible when the ship sleeps. You once thought ghost ship stories were drunken old men's tales, until you heard that laugh at exactly midnight, when everyone was asleep, when the sea was still as a shroud, when you were alone on watch on Mary's ship. It wasn't human, not a wolf's howl, but a sound thin as rum vapor, sliding down your neck like a cold finger, then gone like it never existed. You turned. No one. The mast stood still, ropes taut, moonlight, dusting the deck like grey ash. You didn't breathe, didn't dare blink. Every instinct screamed, don't check. But your feet, stupid, loyal, moved toward where the laugh came from. Aft deck, near the hold's entrance, where no one's allowed after midnight. Something wasn't right. The air was thick, unnaturally cold. The wooden door was ajar, like someone just passed through. You peeked in, pitch black, no torchlight, just the smell of rusted iron, damp, and something dead too long. The next morning, you told an old sailor. He stopped chewing hardtack, glanced around, then whispered, "You heard it, huh?" You nodded. He spat out a toothpiece, set it on the table. "Good. You're not blind anymore. You're seeing what everyone who lives long at sea sees." You thought it was just exhaustion's shadow, until one by one, the crew started whispering things like, "Last night, I saw a ship off the starboard, no shadow," or someone was singing in the hold, in a tongue not human. One night, the whole ship woke to 3 rapid bell strikes, the signal for an enemy ship. But when everyone rushed to the deck, there was only sea, fog, and a dead gull hanging upside down from the mast. Someone had carved, "Come back," into its beak. Mary said nothing, but from that day, she ordered no one to stand watch alone, no one to go too deep into the hold, and most importantly, no one to mention ghost ships. You started hearing footsteps on the deck when there was no wind, someone breathing behind you when you were alone, cleaning water barrels, someone laughing from under the water. Once you leaned down to wash your face and saw your reflection missing, just another face, older, torn, staring back. The old sailor said, "Ships that kill too much carry the souls of the dead." Mary's ship, it's not a ship anymore. It's a giant floating grave. You didn't know whether to believe, but you started sleeping with a knife under your pillow, muttering prayers in 4 languages, and stuffing black cat hair in your shoes. Rumor said, it keeps ghost ships from sniffing you out. One windless night, the ship drifting free, someone shouted, "Ship ahead," and there was one, pitch black, no flag, no lights, moving against the wind. No one steered, no one on deck, just a tattered sail flapping like flayed skin. Mary ordered a course change. No one dared argue, but as your ship turned, that ship turned too. No engine noise, no rope creak, just turned. You don't know how many times you screamed that night. You just remember. The next morning, 5 men were missing. One was found, stiff, hands clawing the railing, eyes pure white. He couldn't speak anymore. His mouth could only smile. And from then on, the crew learned a habit. At night, no one dared laugh, because if a laugh rang out, and no one claimed it, it wasn't from the living. Mary Bloodtooth stayed cold, but you noticed she never stepped on the deck after midnight, never touched ropes near the hold, and she started wearing a small bell around her neck, said to ring, if a spirit passed by, you're still alive. But every night, you dream of hands sprouting from the deck, pulling you down, and you understand one thing: knives can kill men, but they can't cut fear. And if you thought a pirate's greatest fear was hanging, or being slashed, you've never heard someone laugh at midnight, with no one standing beside you, but you know who heard it. Columbus, yes, him, the man who punched a hole through the world's map, with 3 tiny ships, and a belief as big as a sea chart. Columbus knew pirates existed, and he absolutely didn't want to tangle with them. You used to think Columbus was a dreamer, a brave soul chasing Asia, the pioneer crossing the Atlantic. But the truth is, he knew exactly what swam alongside his dreams: pirates, sea dogs and ghost ships, loaded with unrotted corpses. Columbus wasn't blind. He read the rumors, reports, curses, and before setting sail in 1492, he gave a clear order: steer clear of the waters fishermen call boiling, where moans rise from the fog, and wrecked ships float without masters. Columbus never declared war on pirates. He just avoided them. His journey wasn't a fight. It was a dodge. Dodging slaughter, dodging blood, dodging men like you, knife in hand, eyes sleep-deprived, mouth grinning amid corpses. And if Columbus's ships met pirates at sea, he'd light candles for prayer, turn tail as fast as possible, or play dead. It's recorded that once, when the Santa Maria spotted a black smoke trail near the Azores, Columbus ordered sails lowered, all lights doused, and the crew to lie still, silent as a grave. One night, quiet as a tomb, all because he suspected it was a ship of those who live without a nation. You, standing on the other side of history, understand this perfectly, because if Columbus's ship had truly clashed with one like Mary Bloodtooth's, there'd be no great voyage in the books, just a brief note, lost. But Columbus was clever. He found the New World without letting sea wolves nip at his heels, because he didn't play hero with men who believed in no rules. You respect that, because even as a pirate, you get it. It's foolish to attack someone with nothing worth stealing, except hand-drawn maps and a box of rotten food. Still, you remember the first time an old grey-bearded sailor whispered in the dark. You know Columbus once hired pirates to escort him for the first leg. You didn't believe it, but he went on. Rumor is, he paid gold to a Genoa pirate crew to clear the way through waters where ships vanished mysteriously. Just a rumor, but it makes sense, because only someone who's seen a ship burn from the inside out knows no merchant survives without a shadow of a blade. And you wonder, if Columbus had been caught by a pirate ship like yours, what would have happened? Maybe you'd tie him to the mast, read his logbook aloud to mock him. Maybe Mary Bloodtooth would ask, "America, huh? How many gold coins is it worth?" And when he stammered, with nothing but a Spanish queen's promises, maybe she'd toss him overboard for not knowing how to trade. But that didn't happen, and so he made it into history. While you're only remembered in a few sworn lines scratched on wood. If anyone finds my body, don't sail southwest, there's singing there. Columbus was a man of the compass, the stars, distant ambitions. You're a man of dried blood on your hands, broken screams in the night, and silence before a stolen meal. And those two worlds shouldn't meet. Maybe he dreamed of an empire, while you only dreamed of surviving till morning. But strangely, when your ship passed through waters marked Columbus was here, everyone went quiet. No one spat, no one cracked jokes. Though no one said it, you knew, deep down, everyone silently thanked him for not being an enemy, for not being someone you'd rob, and because, maybe for once at sea, you all knew to give each other room to pass. That night, looking at the sky, you saw a constellation called Columbus's Path, and you thought, not everyone has to become a pirate to survive. Some just need to know when to dodge, and dodge well. But dodging isn't an option for you. On a pirate ship, you can't avoid anyone or anything. You can only stare straight ahead, and if something's in your way, you cut it down, because you know a rule written on no sea chart. On this ship, the sharpest knife makes the law. no constitution, no council, no votes. The only law is the blade that shines brightest under moonlight, held by the one ready to stab faster than speak. Every rule is written in blood on the captain's hands, revised with the blood of anyone who dares object. First mates, like you once were, are just assistants to that blade. If you can't stab well, you'd better know when to bow and when to slip a knife. On Mary Bloodtooth's ship, this is clearer than anywhere you've ever been. No one calls Mary captain. They call her the one who doesn't die. No one dares ask why, because the last guy who did is lying in a salt barrel, pickled like dried fish as a living lesson. Every day the law changes. Today, spitting on the deck gets your ear cut off. Tomorrow, not spitting gets you tied up for lacking spirit. Not because Mary's fickle, because she knows, as long as the crew can't predict the law, they won't dare act. They'll just wait for orders. And so, no one schemes to overthrow her. You once saw a big guy, Krug, try to start a sailors' union for equal rum shares. He had a point, had support, but no knife. That night, Mary didn't speak. She just placed a small knife on the table, small but gleaming like a cat's eye. No one touched it. Krug scoffed. Then Mary said, "New law, talk too much. Prove it with your hands." Krug raised his. She cut one clean slice. Blood sprayed like a fountain. He collapsed. No one supported him anymore. And you got it. This isn't a government. It's a creature. The ship's the body. The blade's the brain. Whoever holds it controls everything. You once made a small law as first mate. No one eats a dead man's share for 24 hours. Out of respect. Ritual. Wrong. The one night, you saw Mary eating fish from a man slashed that afternoon. You didn't dare ask, but she looked up, grinned. Whose law? Mine. Got a knife? You went silent. She laughed again. Then it's not a law. From then, you never used the word law. You only suggested, or recommended. And if someone objected, you didn't argue. You just slowly sharpened your knife. Slow, steady, squeaking. And that was that. Another day, your ship captured a Dutch merchant vessel. On board was a priest. He begged, read scripture, said, "God's law rules the sea as it does the land." Mary laughed, handed him a knife. "Then cut my hand and see if God stops you." He didn't dare. She killed him. Simple. And you noticed something strange in this lawlessness. People acted orderly because they knew one misstep and a blade flies. No reason needed, no permit required. The ship's stability didn't come from principles, but from constant threat. And you survived, not by understanding the law, but by knowing who held the knife today. One afternoon, Mary got wounded. First time, a long cut along her side. She didn't speak, but the whole ship knew the knife holder's blood had spilled. And so, 3 guys secretly sharpened blades in the galley. One suggested a new law. The strongest would steer till she healed. You knew what was coming. That night, you held your knife before they finished sharpening. You killed all 3, not out of loyalty, but because you knew, if you didn't, the one holding the knife wouldn't be you. The next morning, Mary nodded. Good, you remember the lesson. No one asked what the new law was, because the old one held, whoever holds the knife is right. You kept that knife, 28 centimeters, bone handle, bloodied by at least 7 men, not to cut, but to remind yourself that, at sea, there's no morality, only sharpness. And sometimes, you enforce the law by daring to need none at all. The ship glides through the wind again. In the distance, an island's light flickers. Mary asks, "Want to dock and check it out?" You look at the sky, the tide, then answer, "Up to you." She nods. Wrong, up to what this knife wants. She raises it. The ship goes silent. No one argues. No one needs to understand. Because they've learned too well, laws aren't written in ink. They're written in steel, and steel only listens to a hand cold enough to kill without blinking. But steel breaks too, and one day, your hand no longer holds a knife. Instead, it's a piece of rope, an empty bag, and a kick to your back that sends you sprawling onto wet sand. You're left behind, on a nameless, uninhabited island, with no fresh water. And you realize, you're not Robinson Crusoe. You have no books, no gun, no talking parrot, just yourself. It started with one sentence you shouldn't have said. "This ship's stern is rotting." That's all. You were just whispering to the holdkeeper while tying sails, but the wind carried your words further than intended. Far, to Mary's ears, and to her, a complaint isn't a report. It's a plot, the start of mutiny. And so, you're no longer on the ship. It happened in 3 minutes. Mary called you to the deck. No yelling, no explanation. She just pointed to the faint island on the horizon. That shore has sand, coconuts, wind. You can think about the ship's quality all you want there. Then she turned away. The crew didn't dare look at you. One guy shrugged and tossed you a dull, worn knife and an old cloth bag. So, you don't feel too bad. And so you were dumped on the island like a sack of rice. No one bothered to throw a water can. No one asked if you knew how to survive, because they knew the answer. And they knew if you survived, you'd be too dangerous to keep. If you died, problem solved. Win-win. Your first step on the island is a step into thirst. Your throat burns like sand on stone. The sun pours down like a giant furnace. No shade, no streams, just rocks, dust and vultures circling overhead, betting whether you'll collapse by noon or late afternoon. You scavenge, search for water signs. Nothing. Dig the ground, just dry roots and fire ants. You smash rocks to filter dew, but here, dew's a luxury. Finally, you crack open young coconuts, licking the cloudy drops like spoiled porridge. Not enough to live, but enough to cramp your stomach. Night falls, not cold as you expected. Damp, stifling, full of mosquitoes the size of beans. You lie on the sand, cloth bag over your face, hearing rustles in the bushes. Something's crawling. Maybe crabs, maybe snakes, maybe hallucinations. But you don't dare sleep, because here, nothing guarantees you'll wake up. Day 2, you start talking to yourself. Not from madness, because silence makes your mind replay every face from the ship. Those you killed, those you saved, those you betrayed, and worst, the one you used to call self. Now he has no knife, no axe, no one to command, just a throbbing brain and blistered hands. You find a small cave. Inside, old signs, ashes, crude scratches. Someone was here, and isn't anymore. You see a line carved on the wall. Day 19. I stopped calling for mother. You laugh, not sure if it's fear, or knowing your turn's coming. Day 5. You eat ants. Not tasty, but they crunch back. Day 8. You chase a crab from a rock crevice. Roast it by burning dry roots and heating stones red hot. The meat's tough, fishy, but you cry swallowing the first bite. Not because it's good, because you're still alive. You stop counting days after that. Mark rocks instead. But your fingers tear, blood smears, marks fade. You don't care anymore. You sleep when it's dark. Wake to bird calls, and you start seeing flickering lights offshore, unsure if they're real ships or your brain's tricks. Until one day, you hear actual footsteps on the sand. You crawl from your hole, heart pounding like a drum, and you see a dinghy, 3 men, faces covered, eyes cold. Not your old crew, not rescuers, pirates, different ship, different band, but sea folk. One points at you, asks, how long you been alive? You don't answer. Another asks, know how to tie ropes? You nod. He tosses a rope, gestures, get on. We need rowers. You don't ask questions. You climb aboard, and you don't look back, because you know you're not Robinson Crusoe. No one's writing your book, no hopeful ending, no maiden emerging from the bushes, just the sea, and knives, and another chance to survive on a different ship, under a different blade, with the same law. If you don't die, you keep rowing. You board the new ship as a shadow. No name, no past, no expectations, but one thing you didn't leave on the island. Memory of the dull knife, of coconut husks, dripping murky water, and of the cave's carved words. I stopped calling for mother. The new ship has no real captain. Power rotates, like shared rum. Whoever cuts last the day before gives orders the next morning. So every decision is inspired, like when the whole ship suddenly roared. Find treasure, after a guy puked up a torn map he'd swallowed while drunk. You laugh inside. Maps again, dreams again, illusions of hoarding gold, living rich, buying a house with a porch, a cat, and hot bread every morning. But you stay silent, don't speak, don't resist, because you know, resisting only makes someone wonder, why don't you want treasure? And that question's as dangerous as a knife, to your throat. The journey starts with excitement. Every man who killed for a share of dried fish suddenly becomes an archaeologist, geographer, poet. Everyone's got a theory. Gold's usually buried under a tree, leaning southwest, or dig, when the moon rises straight into the mountain's gap. You don't chime in, just tie ropes, boil water, and remember, when someone believes in something too good to be true, they usually die for it. And then, they actually find it. Not a skull-marked chest, like in legends, but a dry rock hollow, hidden under pebbles and rotted coral. Inside are old oilcloth bundles, crumbling, but when opened, everyone holds their breath. Spanish gold coins, silver jewelry, a ruby-encrusted cross, copper tubes with colored powder, maybe rare dye, maybe poison. Eyes glaze over, some cry, some laugh, some whisper their kids' names, unsure if they even remember their faces. You don't count, you step back, so no one stabs you for cutting in line. And as you expected, the first knife is drawn before anyone pockets the gold. A former sailmaker stabs the map holder in the back. Blood sprays. The guy screams. A third yells, "Traitor," then slashes the nearest man. In 10 minutes, the white sand runs red. Gasps, hisses, clanging knives, and breaking bones echo like a hell's cathedral bell. You run. Don't grab gold. Don't stab anyone. Just run, because you know the last man standing won't be rich. He'll be wounded, thirsty, hungry, haunted by the ghosts of those he killed every time he closes his eyes. When you return to the beach at dusk, only 3 men sit there, panting like rabid dogs. Their eyes are vacant. Gold scatters like traps. No one touches it. Neither do you. One says, "Take it. You're still whole." You reply, "I'm still sane." 3 days later, when the ship leaves the island, the treasure stays behind. Maybe another crew will pick it up. Maybe the waves will claim it. You don't know, don't want to, because you've seen the real treasure isn't where dreams end. It's where dreams drown in blood. Once, a guy said, "Treasure's never fake, only the people who die before counting it." True, and painful, because everyone thinks if they touch gold, they'll be different. They'll live, they'll stay sane. But sanity's the first thing to spill from your skull when gold glints in your eyes. That night, you lie on the ship, hand gripping the old knife tossed to you when you were abandoned. And you think, the only thing worth keeping isn't treasure. It's the memory of why you didn't raise your knife when everyone else did. And that, to you, is the only spoil you're alive to keep. Not gold, not fame, but the ability to say no to the sweet, deadly thirst. But the sea never lets anyone rest long. And you know, every leaderless ship soon holds an election. A bloody democracy pirates call the Knife Campaign. It starts with the captain's death. One windy morning, the ship tilts. The captain, the last man still wearing a gold ring, slips, falls from the main deck onto an anchor, head splitting like a melon. The ship goes silent for 2 minutes. Then, murmurs begin. Who's next? No one knows the rules exactly. No constitution. No official election day. But everyone knows the process. Want to be captain. Declare it. Don't want someone else to be. Stab. In the back, if needed, or the front, if convenient. By afternoon, 7 men. Campaign. Each has a style. One promises weekly rum shares. Another vows no random killings. One just raises 2 knives to the sky and yells, "I'm the blade. Follow me." You say nothing. Not because you can't. Because you know, the last man standing after this vote will be the one who promises nothing at all. The campaign starts with smiles, ends with knives hitting the mast. First night, one candidate strangled in his sleep, dead with a no-share tax pledge, still clutched in his hand. Second night, 2 men storm the galley to assassinate each other. Both get hacked by the cook for spilling the salted fish pot. Third night, one's forced to puke his meal to prove no axe is hidden in his gut, then stabbed. The southern port city, where no one asks where you're from, as long as you pay with gold, not knives. And you, like always, lead the rabble ashore with a clear order. 2 days off. Drink, eat, fight lightly. Don't kill anyone who doesn't deserve it. But you know full well, unleashing pirates in a city is like letting starving rats loose in a fish market. There'll be a stench, there'll be blood, and someone's definitely not coming back to the ship. The first night, the main tavern turns into a bare-knuckle arena. The eye-patch guy brawls with the four-handed dwarf. One drunk sets his own beard on fire to have light for drinking. A couple kisses passionately before rolling into a pile of roasted chicken bones and passing out like sick dogs. You sit in a corner, sipping rum mixed with well water, the worst but safest drink, and watch to see who'll vanish first. By the second night, 6 are gone. One followed a girl into a dark alley and never returned. One got arrested by local guards for emotionally harming the mayor's parrot. 2 were lured into a dice game by local thugs, stripped of everything, clothes, gold teeth. The other 2, you'll never know. You try rounding them up. Shout. Threaten to cut their shares. But liquor and land are a combo no threat can beat. On the third night, you search for the log keeper and find him being auctioned in the local slave market. Drugged, tied up, labeled, skilled carpenter, unmarried, no contagious diseases. Starting bid, 3 gold coins. You rescue him, not out of pity, but because if you lose another man, you'll have to row, and you're not that good at rigging sails. The next morning, you gather the sober, unbroken, and those who still remember the ship's name, then order departure. 4 are missing. You give them 3 minutes. They don't show. No one mentions them again. At sea, those who stay behind choose to. Whether kidnapped, drugged, or lured into a brothel, disguised as a noodle shop. No one goes back to look. On the way to the ship, a young guy turns to you. Why not stay another day? There's a place I haven't checked out. You look at him, eyes bloodshot, lips bleeding, still clutching an empty bottle, and reply, because if we stay, you won't check out anything. You'll be sold, and no one's buying you back. He shuts up. For the first time, as the ship pulls away, you watch the city fade. The lights, the music, the shouts of drunks or pickpocket victims, all sink into the sea breeze. You don't regret it. You've seen too many believe land is for living. But for pirates, land's just a trap with booze. Every shore leave tests how stupid you've become. That night, on the deck, you glance at the crew list, add 4 words next to the missing. Didn't return on them. Then you close the log and sail on. Because the sea, harsh as it is, doesn't pretend to be kind like land. At sea, whoever holds the knife lives. On land, you can be sold for drinking 3 cups too many, and you swear, next time you dock, you'll be the first back on the ship. No one needs to call, no one needs to wait. Because you know, land is where people smile and sell you out. The sea, at least kills you, without pretending to be nice. But because you understand this, you also grasp a darker truth. Sometimes pirates like you are the ones carrying misery across the ocean. It's time to face a fact. History doesn't like to mention pirates and the slave trade. You used to think pirates only stole gold, rum, gunpowder, things without souls, things that don't scream or cry. But one grey morning, cold as steel, your ship crosses paths with a merchant vessel, reeking of sweat and sunburned skin. It's not a trade ship, it's a slave ship. And for the first time you see people chained in rows, packed like sardines in a hold, smaller than your ship's old rum cellar. The captain, a white-haired, tanned man with rings on every finger, offers a deal. You take the gold, the goods, the rum, leave the cargo, that's what he calls them. And you know, in his eyes, they're not people, just things. And you, what are you in this deal? Mary once said, gold is gold. How you get it doesn't change what it is. But as you stand on the deck, looking into the eyes of a boy chained to a post, eyes wide, not scared, but empty, you wonder if you smile, take the gold, and turn away. Are you still human? No one on your ship objects. Some laugh, some mutter, nothing new. One jokes, need more rowers, grab a few. You stay silent. But for the first time, silence isn't for survival. It's because you don't know what to say. In the end, the gold changes hands. Their ship sails off, and the chained people stay chained. You watch, seeing a woman glance back, not looking for anyone, just making sure no one's watching her. You do, then look down, and from that moment, every time someone mentions treasure, you see that ship. Because the truth is, many treasures hidden on islands didn't come from robbing royal vaults. They came from splitting profits after a successful delivery of people. The gold coins buried deep in the sand once carried the sweat, blood, and broken breaths of those never called by name. Once, the young sailor asked, if you could trade gold for slaves, what would the captain do? You didn't answer right away, but that night, you kicked him off the ship, not for asking something stupid, but because you knew he was looking for a reason to justify what he'd do later, and you didn't want that kind on your deck. You've met other pirate ships, black hulls, tattered sails, heads hung like trophies, but you've never seen anything worse than a slave ship whose crew sings as they dock, because killers still fear revenge. Slave traders kill souls before even touching a knife. You think of yourself, how many times you've tied prisoners' hands, dragged bodies from holds, or chosen who lives when the ship's too full. Each choice, however small, is a slash at what's left of your conscience, and you realize maybe history doesn't mention pirate slavers, not because it's rare, but because it's too common, too real, too filthy for children's adventure tales. It's easier to say pirates laughed, drank, hunted treasure, and shouted, ahoy, than to write, pirates sold kids for rum, and some saw nothing wrong. You don't claim to be good, you've robbed, killed, betrayed, but you swear to yourself, if you die someday, you'll die without ever selling anyone. So you start keeping a record, no names, no specific dates, just a line scratched on a plank below the hold. Here I once refused gold to keep the last look of a child without tears. You don't know if anyone reads it, but you believe the sea knows. The sea swallows bodies, secrets, sins, but it also remembers who chose not to ferry chained souls. And in the real treasure you've seen, the only thing worth keeping isn't gold. It's the choice not to take one more step toward the abyss, where souls are traded for shares. And then, after all the blood, knives, human trades, and nights when the sea roars like a conscience's inquisition, the strangest thing happens. You think you've fallen in love, and it doesn't happen at a grand ball or in a candlelit cabin, but on an island so small you can cross its sand in 10 steps, where there are exactly 3 people, 1 pig, and your sanity slipping day by day. Your ship washed up there, after a short but hellish storm, lost the foremast, sprung a leak in the water hold, and 1 man got struck by lightning while pissing on the anchor rope. Repairs take time, so you set up camp on the shore, tiny island, no name, no map, but it has fresh water, coconuts, and strangest of all, a leaf hut already built. Inside are them, a pair of brothers, stranded 2 years ago, and a girl. No one asks why she's there. She doesn't talk much, just says her name is Liri. Short hair, sunburned skin, hands calloused from rowing or snapping shark necks. She's not beautiful, like land girls are described, but you can't look away when she smiles. A smile like someone who's seen too much death and only laughs to survive. And there's the pig, named Gustav. No one remembers who named it, but it knows how to open salt jars and nuzzles. Anyone who's sad, you once saw it lick a drunk's tears, then knock him into a dung pit. Island creature, empathy at its finest. Days pass, ship repairs, crawl. Each night, you sit by the fire, listening to Liri tell of the time she nearly died eating poisoned clams, or when she scared off a pirate crew by pretending to be mad, stripping naked, and screaming bird calls from a pole. She's unlike anyone you've met, asks for nothing, boasts of nothing, and above all, isn't afraid of you. Then, one evening, under light rain, you and she take shelter, under the same canopy. Gustav sleeps at your feet. You tell her about your first ship, where you killed your first man for being accused of stealing salted fish. She doesn't judge, just nods and says, everyone starts wrong. What matters is where you go from there. You smile, and you know that smile isn't like any you've had before. It's not bitter, not reeking of rum, not laced with blood. It's real. And you, who's lived among knives, mad captains, and treasure dreams stinking of despair, suddenly want to live on an island with 3 people and a pig, but you're a pirate, and the sea never lets anyone rest long. The first mate, who'd been jealous of how Liri looked at you, starts whispering to the crew. She knows the way. Maybe there's treasure nearby. Could be a spy. And one night, you see Liri's things being searched. Nothing but a bamboo comb and a jar of salted fish. But no proof is needed to sow doubt. On a ship, Trust is carved in half before anyone can say, "I'm innocent." You get angry. First time in months. Not for honor, not for some morality, but because for once, someone didn't see you as a monster, and you don't want the world to shatter that fragile thing. You threaten to hang anyone who touches Liri again. You drive your knife into a pile of wood and say, "Anyone who doubts her, try killing me first." No one steps up, not because they fear you, but because you're in love, and no one wants to face a man in love at sea. Those men are crazier, fiercer, more desperate than anyone. The next morning, Liri packs her things. You ask where she's going. She smiles. "I'm not the type to leave footprints for anyone to follow forever." You try to stop her, but she puts a hand on your shoulder. "Keep the memory. You don't need to keep me." You watch as she walks into the forest. Gustav follows, then turns back, looks at you like it's saying, "No one died this time, but you lost something heavier than an arm." And so you board the ship, leave the island, leave the only person you ever thought of when it rained. At sea, no one mentions it. They think you're over your sunstroke. You let them think that. But when the waves calm, you picture laughter among palm fronds, a small figure jumping on Gustav's back, and her last words, "You don't need to keep me. You don't need to keep her." But the sea keeps that memory for you, like a stone that won't sink. Something not as precious as gold, but worth more than blood, because the only time you loved was on an island with 3 people and a pig, and no one, not even history, can steal that from you. But history doesn't need to steal, it just needs to whisper a lie well enough. Like, there's still a treasure out there, no one's found. And so, after all you've survived, lost, refused, buried, the treasure dream returns, not from a knife's edge, but from the most dangerous place. Hope. It starts with a rotting piece of paper, found when you order the crew to rip up the salt hole's lining to stop termites. A faded map with a giant X in the middle of an unnamed sea. A small handwritten arrow, dig under the 3rd coconut tree's shadow at sunset. The crew doesn't ask if it's real or fake. They don't need to, they're too tired of surviving and killing. What they need is something to believe in, even for a week, a day, or an afternoon to kill time. And you see it in their eyes, the same look you had when you first heard of the golden city of El Dorado. As captain, or rather, the one who keeps the ship afloat, you could tear up the map and order the course unchanged. But you don't, because you fear something no one dares name: emptiness. After Liri, after the blood-soaked treasure, after all the knives, you realize the ship needs to head somewhere. And if not for love, fame, or survival, then maybe hope is the last choice. The ship changes course. No one objects. They laugh more, drink less. Some even clean the deck without being told, because everyone's thinking of gold, the gold they thought was left behind in the tall tales of survival. But this time, it's real, because it's in their hands, on their map, in their decision. And you're scared, not of failure, but of success. Because you know, if you find real treasure this time, who dies first? The map holder, the one who touches the chest, the one who suggests splitting it evenly. And then you wonder, if you dig it up, will you still be sane enough to step back? When you reach the island, everything's almost as described. A row of coconut trees, a path, a flat sandbank, like a devil's dance floor, and the shadow of the 3rd coconut tree. At sunset, the crew digs like mad. Bare hands, broken nails, some get nosebleeds from the heat. Some laugh like they're losing their minds when they unearth the first wooden chest. And it's real, not fake. Inside is gold, antiques, jewelry, even a leather-bound journal, warped and rotting, written in a shaky hand. "I buried it here because I killed my friend for it." If you read this, do better than me. But no one reads the journal. They cheer, hug each other, start whispering about how to split it fairly. You know what comes next. You've lived it. And this time, you won't repeat it. You order the chest closed. No splitting yet. Wait till we're on the ship. Wait for good winds. Wait till we're far from anything that can bleed. But no one listens. One guy draws a knife. Another shoves him down. And when the dust settles, 3 men lie on the sand. No blood this time, but tears. You, standing by the gold chest, say, "Kill if you want to kill. Follow me if you want to live. The treasure, leave it." The ship goes silent. Then one turns away. then another. In the end, only 5 linger by the chest, not out of greed, but because they can't believe they could let go. You don't force them. Just leave a line in the sand before boarding. Hope isn't the enemy, but when it takes the shape of a dream you can hold, it'll kill you with your own survival instinct. You don't look back, not because you're noble, but because you know the treasure dream doesn't kill you. Hope does, by turning you into someone ready to kill for it. And you've done that once. You don't need a second time. No need to touch the gold. No need to keep the treasure. No need to cling to the sea's sweetest dream. Only to wake with blood on your hands. And from the moment you turn your back on that gleaming chest, you truly start to survive. But surviving isn't the same as living. Because after 7 years adrift, through storms, mutinies, and deaths without graves, you're still breathing. But you can't remember your own name. You once had a name, first spoken by your mother, when you were naive enough to think the sea was just fish and ships. That name was once written on a ship's bow, carved on a knife handle, whispered in drunken port nights. But now, when someone asks, "What's your name?" you hesitate, then give one you make up on the spot, because the real one doesn't come to mind anymore. One day you sit before a rusted tin mirror, the only thing still reflecting faintly, and stare at yourself. Do you recognize that face? A scar across the cheek, chipped tooth, eyes sunken like they were dug from a crypt. You once had a clear voice, a steady gaze. Now your voice is hoarse as salt, and your eyes only look far away. Once a kid selling cloth at a port called you by your old name. "Are you Gavin? Gavin Seawolf?" You flinched, but instead of joy, you felt fear. That name sounded like a spell waking scars that had just healed, and you brushed it off. Wrong guy, kid, but you knew he was right. That name was once you, not anymore. You start a journal, hoping words will stir memory, but you find your hand writes, but your mind doesn't connect to the lines. Every sentence reads like someone else's. "I boarded a ship from Cadiz." Cadiz? Or Valencia? "I killed my first man at 18. Or 16. Or did someone else kill for you? You remember the rain the night you were left on the island, the smoke when Mary Bloodtooth's ship sank amid screams, Liri's eyes. But you don't recall your age. Who first called you by your real name? What you were before the sea shaped you into the last survivor. One night, when the tide is the year's highest, you stand on the deck, staring at an inky black sea. The waves aren't rough, the wind isn't strong, but inside you, a storm rages, not from fear of death, but because you realize you've survived everything, only to become a ghost without a name. When someone calls you captain, you nod. When they call you the old man who stayed, you nod. When a newcomer asks, "What's your real name?" you say, "I don't need one anymore. Just know, I'm not the last to die on this ship." And you start carving on the mast, not your name, but the names of those who died beside you. Slowly, the mast thickens, etched like tattooed skin with last words. You can't carve your own name, not out of humility, but because you don't know what to write, and that's the deepest loneliness. You survived. But you have no roots, no beginning, only middle parts, drenched in blood, rum, tears, silence. You're a coil of rope with no start, only tightening and pulling toward darkness. Once you try lying down, closing your eyes, imagining your death. But you can't picture anyone crying for you. No one will carve a headstone. No one will tell who you were. They'll only remember, there was a man who lived longest among us, and then vanished. And in that moment, you understand, you don't need a name anymore. The sea has called you enough names: sea demon, survivor, the old man who doesn't die, and each time you lived a little longer. But by living so many parts, you lost the first one. You thought the worst memory was betrayal, abandonment, being cut, loving and losing. But now you know, the worst is not knowing who you once were. When you become a legend without roots, a story where the part his name was, goes silent, and that's how the sea kills slowest. Not with knives, but with time, and forgetting. But even as your name washes away in memory's fog, something remains, not a sound, not a face, not a blade, but a story. No one remembers your name, but some still hear your tale. And sometimes, in a rotting port tavern, under the patter of rain on rusted tin. That story is whispered. Not sure how much is true, how much made up, but it lives. A young sailor, skin still soft, eyes still bright, will sit by a ship's fire, pour rum, and ask the oldest man alive. Ever met him? The man with no name. The old man will smile, puff smoke from his pipe, let out a hoarse rasp like a rope pulled too tight. Saw his back once, covered in scars, heavy, like he carried the whole ocean. The story starts with you being strung up on a gallows and surviving. Then how you killed a captain with a wooden fork when framed for stealing. Then when you refused a gold chest to keep a child's tearless gaze. They tell of you like a walking shadow, sometimes appearing, sometimes dissolving into the wind. No one knows if you were human. Some say you're a sea ghost, born from foam and vengeance. Others swear you saved them. In a rainy night, when everyone drew knives over a mouldy biscuit barrel, you become a legend. Not the kind sung with lutes, but the kind scratched in dried blood on tavern walls. Lines like, "Don't trust a man who doesn't know his name. He's lived too long to be kind." Or the only one who refused to split the treasure, and lived. You once feared being forgotten. But then you realized no one keeps their name forever. But if someone tells how you chose not to kill, loved someone under palm trees, sharpened a knife, then put it away, then you live. Not in ship logs, but in whispers after a drunken night. A girl, daughter of a Tortuga tavern keeper, grew up with the nameless pirate story. Each night she drew what she imagined. A man in a wide-brimmed hat, face unclear, standing in a storm, hands empty, yet everyone stepped aside. When she grew up, she left the tavern, found a ship, sailed, just to know if he was real. Maybe she met you, maybe not. Maybe you're dead, your body drifting somewhere, unburied. Or maybe, one afternoon, in sunlight piercing grey clouds, she saw a man hunched by wind, hands scarred, carving a name he couldn't recall why he carved. She didn't ask who he was. Just heard of the man with no name. He smiled, softly, didn't confirm, didn't deny, just said, if he exists, hope he lived long enough to see a pig open a salt jar, and she laughed. Like you laughed, last time, on the island, and in that laugh, you live again, not in flesh, but in continuation. You don't need a name on a gravestone, no bronze statue, no epic poem, because the scariest thing is living so long you forget your name. But the most beautiful is someone somewhere, remembering the choices you made, remembering that amid a sea of knives and betrayal, there was a man, nameless to all, but known for one thing. He lived and died, with a principle even the sea couldn't shake. Maybe you're now part of the saltwater, resting among coral reefs, or still out there, older than memory, sitting at the ship's bow, not rowing, not speaking, just watching. And in every port, every tavern, every knife sharpened as someone tells a tale, your shadow slips in, as a warning, or a comfort, depending on the listener. But surely, you're still there. So because at sea, everyone dies, but few become stories, and you, nameless, are remembered that way. That's how you're immortal. That's the final treasure. And strangely, the one thing no one fights over. The tale of the nameless pirate is a long journey of survival, loss, conscience, and ultimately memory, or more precisely, the loss of memory. But set against today's American society, you realize the life of a pirate adrift on the seas isn't so different from an individual's journey in the modern world. In America, amid temptations of wealth, fame, and the pressure to succeed, people can just as easily lose themselves, like that pirate lost his name after 7 years adrift. One of the most thought-provoking moments is when the protagonist refuses treasure to preserve the pure memory of a child sold into slavery. That reflects a moral choice in a world that often values achievement, money, and winning above all. In America, where success is frequently measured by career or wealth, this lesson underscores that sometimes the right thing is to reject the reward if the cost is your soul's peace, or when the protagonist chooses not to join the bloody election for captain, opting only to keep the ship afloat. It's a powerful metaphor for leading with quiet integrity and strength, something still vital for those running businesses, schools, or communities in America today. Finally, the pirate's deepest pain isn't death, but being forgotten, erased from memory. Similarly, modern people can get so busy they lose their identity, the original reason they began their journey. Don't become a nameless figure in a noisy society. Live so your story is told, not for how successful you were, but for how you stayed kind, stood firm, and didn't betray yourself. If this journey of a nameless man full of memories makes you reflect on your own life, hit subscribe to catch more stories just as profound. Thanks for joining. See you on the next adventure, where sometimes it's not the name, but our choices that truly last forever.